Hey, welcome to mehminipainting. Today I'm going to show how to go from this plain old 130mm base to this large industrial base. Alright, so earlier in this series I made small industrial bases, and now I'm going to work on a large 130mm base, which in this case is for an Onager Doom Crawler from the Adeptus Mechanicus. And this is all nice and magnetized, so gotta take all of it apart there. But I have no real set plan for this one, but I have kind of a rough idea of what I would like in my mind, kind of what I want it to look like, but without a real set plan. So I'm going to use most of the same materials from my previous videos. So I'm going to use a sheet of plasticard or sheet styrene. It's going to be 0.4mm thickness. Some plastic needlepoint mesh, heard it called grating, and applique pens. And then I also have a special thing that I'm going to tear apart later. And this initial part is just like how I did on the previous one. I'm going to go around with the sheet styrene, match it up roughly to the actual base, and then I'm going to cut it in half, and then in portions of those halves in order to make it so that the looks like there's actual different deck plates that are coming together on the floor. So, and then once those are put in, I'm going to glue them down with some liquid super glue. So after gluing everything down, I went around and I just trimmed the edges with a sharp knife in order to get it a little bit more flush with the top. And then I'm going to set the actual onager up here so I can see how it fits. And then I have this little box that I'm going to make right next to it. So I'm going to draw that in with a pencil in order to make sure it looks like it would fit right. And we're going to have little walls that come up out of the base, and I'm going to put the grating on top of that. So in order to get the grating to look right, I'm going to, after I have it all penciled in, I can measure the grating and cut it all out rather than trying to cut it out later once I already have the walls installed or framed in. And then after that's trimmed up, I can start measuring the walls. Here you can see I'm actually measuring the height of the onager to make sure that the walls that I'm putting in aren't going to be too tall. And you know, truthfully, looking back on it, after I was all done, I think that I still made it a little bit too tall, but you know, oh well. Alright, so this area that I'm making is an equipment pit with a grating on top. I'm going to use gel super glue since it's thicker and it kind of helps fill in any gaps that might show up. This is actually a pretty good situation to use hot glue, but I didn't have it set up and I didn't feel like turning it on. So, some people don't like to see dried glue, but I think that it's okay for some of the glue to push out in this particular case. And the reason why is that when these walls go up, if you were to actually construct this in real life and you welded it in, you'd use what's called a fillet weld along the edge of those walls where they go into the floor and then where they go in together with each other. And the dried glue coming out actually does kind of look like those types of welds. So I think it gives it actually a little bit more realistic appearance in this case. Okay, while that's drying, I'm gonna get some factory looking type machinery stuff. So this is an old alarm clock that I bought for $1.95 at McKay's. McKay's is a used bookstore, and if you are in or near Nashville, Knoxville, Chattanooga, Winston-Salem, or Greensboro, you should go because it's pretty sweet. And I'm gonna tear stuff out in order to make this equipment area suitably filled with stuff that just kind of looks appropriate. I didn't really worry about making sure that I had things that, all this stuff down here isn't going to actually do anything. It's just purely for aesthetics. So I didn't have to worry to make sure that I had, all the correct stuff in there and it wasn't wired together. I'm just putting it down and gonna glue it to make sure that it actually looks like an equipment trough. Alright, now I'm throwing in a cut right here just because it was actually getting hard to get in there and actually tear it apart and be on camera. So I took it off camera so I could really just get some pieces that I wanted. And then I'm going to arrange everything in a way that makes it look like it could conceivably do something, and glue it down. And then once I have this stuff in there and I'm relatively happy with it, I'm going to glue down the grating. And these troughs like this, these little areas, they're called lots of different things in my various time working around machinery. I've heard it called a bear cave, an equipment trough, a dead body cave, a puka. That was when I was in Hawaii. What else? A few other things that probably shouldn't put on YouTube. But they're just areas that are full of machinery that you can kind of just take up the grating if you need to go down there, but otherwise they're just cordoned off so that way you don't actually have to walk around inside of that kind of stuff. And these are fairly common in power plants, factories, industrial areas. So. Alright, so I have everything in there and I'm relatively happy with it. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down the grating on top. So that way from the scene it just looks like something that, you know, somebody would be able to see through. And then from the side you can actually see inside of it, and that makes it just kind of look neat. Once that's all dry, I'm going to add some trim work to the bear cave, and the trim is going to go around the seams where the grating goes on, and then around the corner piece, and it's just going to be some cut up plastic card held down with super glue. I'm also going to put some texture inside of this equipment space using the old super glue and baking soda method. I went with this because it is kind of random and we'll let it build up like you would see in an area like this, because you know nobody gets in there and cleans anything. So especially with having this grating on top, you have just stuff that could fall through, grease, grime, all that just nastiness that comes with this type of environment. So I went with this method just to give it that random build up. So my method for rivets is the same as in the small bases shown in my previous videos. To summarize, I'm going to use these applique pens, You get your side snips as close as you can to the head, cut off the head, chase the head that you just cut off around on your desk. You lose it on the floor, you give up on that one, and then you cut another one. Once you do that enough without being irritated and giving up, you make a few extra and make sure that you keep them in something. I have this upside down base that I like to kind of store mine in. So once you have enough plus a few extra, because you're going to lose some more, I go through and I make divots in the plastic card using just something a little sharp. And then I lay the pin head in the divot with the sharp side down and push down a little bit on it to try to get it a bit more flush. And then I add a drop of liquid super glue to keep it in place. And you just do this a number of times that makes the surface look right to you. Okay, so surprise, I cut away and forgot to restart the camera because I'm very unprofessional. But here what I'm doing is I have some old liquid green stuff that is basically now solid green stuff that I'm brushing onto the plastic card. Make sure you use a brush that you want to throw away if you do this. I got this brush for like 20 cents at a going out of business sale. I went with liquid green stuff because it's more subtle than the baking soda and super glue method. Basically, I want it to look not smooth rather than heavily textured. A lot of deck plates and things like that have some texturing to them, but they're not heavily textured. It's just enough to basically make sure that people don't just slip and fall. It's like not a sheet of glass. So yeah, so I'm going for not smooth. Now, while the liquid super glue is wet and everything is white, it's kind of hard to see that texturing, but it is much more noticeable once it's primed and then painted. So here you can see it all done with the dune crawler for reference. I do think it's still a little bit too high, but that's what happens when you don't have necessarily have set plans for things that you're wanting to work on. And then here it is with everything painted, primed black. The rivets and the texture is quite noticeable without it looking like they're walking around just in dirt. I'm looking forward to painting this up and having quite a bit of fun with it. So if you enjoyed this and you want to see more of my work, give this video a like, maybe subscribe and comment if you want to, and you can see what I'm working on between videos by checking out my social media. Links are available via Linktree down in the description of the video. Thanks, I will see you next time.